So I hereby call this meeting to order. The time is 6 p.m. Notice was given in the manner required by law, and it was posted in the manner required by law. And we are ready to get started this evening. First on the agenda, information items. We are starting with a truancy update. Dr. Dupree.
Yes, ma'am. Dr. Whitbeck and Dr. Carlson are going to share our annual truancy update with the board. They are slated for a 10-minute report.
Excellent. Excellent.
And because we did provide you the reading material in advance. So, Dr. Whitbeck, go.
Well, good evening. We are delighted to be here to give you an update on one of the most challenging topics that we face in education, not just in Fort Bend, but throughout our country. And we think about the quote, half of the battle is showing up. And so we know that we are working to get kids to be a part of our schools. We know that once we can get them in there, our odds are so much greater that we'll hook them and connect with them in relationships and get them to be successful. So as we start, we just want to take a moment and frame this. This is a very large district. And so when we talk about truancy, we need to know what proportion are we really looking at. So if you'll look at the diagram, at the close of the school year, you can see we had almost 74,000 kids, but the percentage of absenteeism was only 3.1. So as a district, we have 96.9% attendance, which is absolutely commendable from a district perspective. So we do want to keep it in kind of proportion. So let's break that down. Also to share with you, 177,000 absences. So the point here is we expect excused absences. We want that. We want children to be home when they're sick. We know there's family emergencies, and we expect that. And so we do have systems in place to honor those excused absences. Where we run into our challenge is when students are absent more than 10 times in a 6-month period, and that's actually the definition of truancy. And just as a reminder to the board and the audience, we had some shifts with House Bill 2398 that allowed this to be less criminal and to be more less heavy-handed, so to speak, from the courts, and more looking at ways to do positive interventions with kids. And that's been our direction. So Dawn is going to share with you what we have done this past year and what our results are, and then I'll share with you as we wrap up what are we going to do this year differently.
So if we look at some of the interventions that we did and some of the implementations, we did create a protocol that assisted the assistant principals in documenting what we are doing to support our students. We hired SIS PEAM specialists to also support the high school campuses at 9 of the 11 campuses. We added a dropout preventionist to Hightower. We also added additional social work support at Marshall High School, along with in-district resources and supports, and then some referrals to out-of-district, outside agencies. Some of those referrals from our outside agencies came from our Saved by the Bell program and our county. We also conducted focus groups at Marshall, Willow Ridge, Hightower, and Bush, and we will be adding, that's Christy's part. We're going to talk about that in a minute, but we conducted several focus groups with students, which was very enlightening, and then also with administrators and staff to get their perceptions of why students were being absent. And then, of course, we continued our truancy diversion program. So when we look at our truancy diversion program, we sent invitations to over 10,000 families, students, and we had almost 53 or just over 5,300 attend, which was a 52% attendance rate. We typically get very good feedback from those programs because it's just a lot of information that they may not have known until they come. So when we look at our truancy results, we have a minimal problem at elementary. It's only 0.6%. So of our 33,000 kiddos, we only had 201 students that actually accumulated 10 or more unexcused absences. At middle school, you can see we have 1.9, so almost 2%. And at high school is where we tend to have the largest concern with 12.7% of our students. And so our district average is 4.7. Within that, because of the interventions we tried and really looking at the kiddos on a case-by-case basis, we made 86 referrals as compared to 3,700 last year. So a significant decrease in referrals. However, when we look at our total unexcused population, our students with 10 or more unexcused absences, our total did increase by almost 500 students from last year, which is a concern. And so when we think about those concerns because of the increase between the focus groups, talking to students and talking to administrators, we really found that one of the big misconceptions was that the students really felt like truancy didn't exist. They felt like, you know, there wasn't any, because of what came out at the end of the 2014-15 school year, where we stopped for a minute and then the laws changed and then we entered into our new legislation. Not all of that, I think, was communicated, even though there was quite a bit of communication that went home to the parents. So the students just felt like they weren't going to get in trouble if they didn't come to school. There was no consequences within the courts. It's civil now, and so it's a little bit different than what they dealt with before if they had been to the courts before. And then the biggest issue is that students just don't feel connected to school. They need a connection. They need a reason to be there. And for some, that's not there yet. And so I'm going to give it back to Christy to look at the recommendations.
So in listening to students and looking at our data, you know, what do we need to do differently as we move into the 16-17 school year? One of the things that you'll see first is to create a shared form. And actually today in our executive team, Long and his team brought us ways to use SharePoint. And we're seeing this in lots of areas of our district. And so this will be one place that when an assistant principal talks to a student, a counselor, a dropout preventionist, it can all be in one location. We didn't have that for them this year, and that was something that they asked for. And so when we shared that with them this past week, they cheered. So they're very glad to see that kind of system coming their way. We're going to separate the truancy diversion program into elementary and secondary, having elementary once a month, and then secondary 2 times in the morning and in the afternoon, just to offer a little bit more flexibility. We've already planned to add additional social worker, half day at Marshall and Willow Ridge to share a teaching unit, and then ADA clerks at all 11 high schools. And really, this is not just tied to truancy. This is tied to just record keeping, because if you remember in the secondary schools, you have attendance taken every period of the day, so it's 7 times the enrollment of the school every single day. And so there's a lot of room for error and a lot of extra attention that can be paid to calling a parent saying, we don't have Susie's excused note, where is that, and things like that. So we were happy to have that as part of our staffing plan that went out this year. All right, we want to also share with you restorative circles. You've heard a lot and you've seen a memo on restorative discipline, and we're going to hold some of those circles specific to truancy at our high-risk campuses and in those 12 identified feeder elementary schools. We're going to continue the focus groups that you've heard about, but we're going to add them at Elkins and Travis. And then our recommendation to you, should you approve the MOU, is to continue the Saved by the Bell program. So I'm going to give you one little bit of statistics. You know, the role of the caseworker changed from being more of a reactive role to a proactive role. So this is a little bit of the data, how they were able to help us. So a lot of home visits. And when you look at the research, that's one of the biggest recommendations that they make, and we believe in that as well. But usually we send 2 people to home visits, not just 1. So this is really helpful when they go out and actually visit with the families. You can see the counseling, the preventative measures, how many families they helped with other resources. And then they're going to continue with kids that were already in the court systems so that they can help to move them through successfully. But we had a lot of success stories from helping a student who has a baby who needed child care for being sick. We had gift cards given for new clothes, for hygiene products, lots and lots of little success stories that the caseworkers assisted us with this year. So in closing, we do recommend Saved by the Bell for you, but we did want to just kind of share with you why. Don went over a lot of the why, but when you just a recent article from Johns Hopkins Institute really makes the connection to poverty and lack of attendance in schools. That is the greatest connection. So we know that we've got to be in the places where our children need us the most. So we're excited about some of the new things that we want to try. We also know that there's an inverse relationship to being absent from school and performing well in school. You need to be there in order to learn. So we'll continue to work in that positive direction, And we want that case-by-case approach where we're really looking at the individual child and that family, because we can generalize it, but when it gets down to it, what's true for Dawn may not be true for me or for someone else. So we really have to get down there and get to know the child and what's happening, and that's our goal. So I think we did that in 9 minutes and 37 seconds, and we are open to questions.
That's very commendable. Thank you very much. Questions from the board members? Mrs. James.
Yes, thank you very much for that presentation. I have a couple of questions from your slides. When you say that daily attendance is 96.9%, does that mean, what does that mean?
You want to answer it?
So on a daily basis, we take the average. So each day, in general, 96.9% of our students are on campus in their classroom learning every day.
Okay, so that's not really taking into account, that's not a percentage overall of how many students are truant.
No, those would not totally be equal when you tried to match that data, yes.
Okay. All right, and then you talked a little bit about some focus groups that you held with students at a couple of different schools. What did you, what were the students saying? You sort of alluded to a couple of conclusions that you had drawn, but what were some of the things you heard from the students?
Well, we heard a variety of things, but case in point, a lot of the students are the ones who told us that they think it doesn't matter, that there's a perception out there that the students think, oh, there's not really going to be anything that really happens to me, so to speak. And I think that goes back to in the past, there were fines sometimes to the families. There were consequences that were a little greater. And since those have been really taken away, the kids really shared that they know that and that their peers know that. They also shared, though, that kids need to get involved. The kids that are involved are really excited about school. They love school. They're proud. And they talked about how other kids aren't because they just don't have a connection. So that's why we really know we have to go back to that. What else did we hear?
We do have a higher increase with ninth graders or repeat ninth graders, and a lot of times they're new to high school. Maybe they aren't on the athletic team or in the band or in an activity or a club after school. And so when we spoke with different groups of kids, they actually talked about trying to figure out how to get the ninth graders more involved, because they also felt like maybe they didn't really know what direction they were going yet, whereas you become a sophomore and a junior and you're starting to kind of see the light and you need to come up with your plan. Hopefully you already have your plan. But for those of the students that don't quite have their plan intact yet, trying to help give them some direction and guidance. It was very powerful. Or if they don't have that
much of a connection to school, then getting involved in something helps connect them and gives them some accountability in a different way than.
And I'll share one other, I think, very powerful overarching theme that came from those visits with kids, and we all went and really, really listened to them, was the students themselves were less tolerant of their peers who are truant than we as adults are. That was very clear. In other words, they just need to get up and get to school. That's what I do, and I work at night, and I do this, and I do that, and they just need to. We heard a lot of that. And so whereas we're looking for how can we help and what are the reasons, they're like, they just need to do it. It was an interesting theme, but I would tell you that it was quite prevalent.
Well, that's interesting, and it makes me think of, as we go forward with this, how we help to educate the parents, how we help to educate the community to understand, what we've got going here. Because if we've got kids in a school where, 90% of them want to be there, or 85% want to be there, and 15% don't, and make excuses and don't show up and whatever, that reflects then on the overall achievement of the school. And you might get the wrong impression of the job that the staff and the is doing at that school. I just think we might be facing that in the near term when we start looking at, that A to F and some of these other ratings and things that might come out. And if we don't shape the message some, we're going to just have a real negative message rather than reinforcing the kids that are doing what they need to be doing and taking care of business. so, thanks very much.
Ms. Heliger?
Okay, and I would like to just echo Mrs. James' comments concerning the different criteria and variables that will be considered in really rating our school systems, and this data, it directly reflects that. So one of the things as I look through our trending data for the past year, a lot of this is just over the last year. However, what I really wanted to take a look at was the trend and changes over the period of time. And so I think on the last page of this truancy document that you have, it gives me a 22 to 2016, I guess a 5-year view into our truancy numbers. And I just want to make sure I'm reading this correctly. Could you just, before I'm making any assumptions, or say any assumptions out loud, can you just kind of describe what these numbers mean, how the numbers changed from 2015 to 2016?
So on the graph, you've got the 2012 to 2016 across the bottom, and then across the top, starting at the top with the red line, it gives you the 1 to 6 days. So any student that's been absent 1 to 6 days, and then it goes to 7 and 8, and then 9, and then 10 or more. So when you're looking at it, you're looking at all the students in the district who have accumulated that much. Now, it is cumulative. So when you're looking at this, so it's the 1 to 6, and then it doesn't, I don't believe it breaks out just 7 and 8. I think it goes to the students that have accumulated 7 and 8, and then 9, and then 10 or more.
Right, so I'm clear with the scale that you have here. What I want to make sure I understand is the trend from 2015 to 2016. So if I look at it from, let's say, for example, the 7 to 8 days unexcused, for 2015, it was a negative 4.63%. I'm assuming that means the 3,524 unexcused absence days. And then if you look at 2016, it says 3,054, but the percentage is increased to negative 13.05%. Can you just provide me an explanation of the variance between 2015 and 2016? Because this is where we need to take a look at, because we put in new rules, new factors, we have new policies from last year. So as you all are making your recommendations for 2016, I want to understand how that's going to impact these numbers.
Well, as Dawn mentioned in her presentation, we had about 500 more unexcused students with 10 or more unexcused absences. So all the effort that we did not give us the results that we wanted. I mean, that's the truth. We went down in total amount, or I guess you should say up in total amount of unexcused students with unexcused absences, 10 or more. And so that's why we're like, okay, now what can we do differently? How can we, do some of the new recommendations to bring that down?
I think one thing that might be helpful in response to Ms. Heliger's question is, can you clarify what does 2016 mean and what does 2015 mean? Is that the 15-16 school year?
It's got to be the end.
I mean, what does that marker mean?
It would be. So 2015 would be the 14-15 school year, and 2016 is the 15-16 school year.
Well,
Is that-
yes, but I want to clarify that, because if I look at the 10 or more days unexcused, it shows an 11% decrease from 15 to 16. So I'm trying to understand how that's connecting with what you all are saying. I think that's where
I'm
you
going
are,
with
Ms.
it. I'm
Heliger.
trying to understand how to read this graph, because if I look at this graph, it's showing a decrease. That's why I said I didn't want to make any assumptions about it. I wanted you all to provide me that explanation. And the only place where I saw an increase was from the 1 to 6 days. So I'm looking for trends here.
I don't really understand.
I was gonna say, I think it's because it's cumulative.
I think that we would need to get you some more information on that, because I do see what you're saying, and on this particular graph, it is to me a little confusing as well. And I think we would do best to get you some more information, because I would not want to misspeak. But I do know that our overall data is that truancy is higher and has increased from the year of 2014-15 to the year of 15-16.
Yeah, but I would like to see it broken down based on what this graph is trying to show me is where that increase is overall in all the different areas, but I would like to see that, please.
I think if you just recreated that graph but didn't
Would that
make
be-
it cumulative, it would show.
It might, yes. And then it also includes active and inactive students. And I'm not sure that we included the inactive students if they withdrew from the district in our other data too.
Thank you. Mr. George?
We'll get you an updated graph.
Yeah, I just have a quick question. And as we all know, truancy is not just a Fort Bend ISD issue, it is a community's problem. And I see that there are some focus group you mentioned there, but I don't see, when I was reading that, I don't see, or correct me if I am wrong, how we are involving the community in the sense, maybe, I'm just throwing some ideas out there, maybe churches, local pastors, or some other, community focus groups, because I think it take the whole village, so, and I don't know, we are doing something, I don't know how we can do it, or what are the formalities behind it, but their involvement is, in my opinion, it's very important. And I haven't seen anything mentioned here. I don't know you're doing already, but that's something I like to see if possible, because it's their problem too. And actually, faith groups and all that kind of people have a lot of influence in the society and in the community where they belongs to. So I think involving them somehow, I think it make a lot of sense.
Absolutely. And we have, I think that has begun with community relations, starting to, have a mentoring program. I know we had a large group of faith-based leaders here in this room a few months ago. And so I think we'll be picking up that charge this year, looking at the student and community engagement and working to increase mentors, assigning mentors to kids who actually really want that connection with someone who's going to check on them.
Sure.
And to bring those faith-based leaders and other leaders into the schools. So we're with you 100%, and that'll be part of our plan as well.
Why don't we talk to some pastors also, local pastors? I don't know, can it be done?
Yes, and there's many that are very interested.
Yeah.
We have many that are interested.
Yeah.
And
And
we
they
have-
do have so much influence in the community, so please, I like to see that kind of stuff also incorporating in this.
And
whole
we
idea.
had that partnerships forum, that's what you're talking about, right? And we're gonna have a partnerships luncheon, so hopefully that's where we're going with that.
Yes, that was it.
Thank you.
So, I had just a couple clarifying questions. On slide number, it's not numbered, but on the recommendations continued slide, you said that restorative discipline or restorative circles would be held at is that all middle schools?
Yes.
All middle schools, and then 12 identified elementary campuses, in addition to the high school campuses?
Not high
Or
school
not
this
high
year.
school?
Yes, this year it's all moved from just a few middle to all middle, and then our foremost at-risk middle schools, 3 elementary feeders each time. That's where we get the 12. And we had a memo on that. We can certainly resend that too if that helps you to have that fresh as to which schools and things like that.
So the focus groups were what you were doing at the high school level?
Focus groups were at the high school.
So my only question about that is, so as I was looking at the unexcused absences, I ranked them. It was Hightower, then Marshall, then Willow Ridge, then Bush, then Elkins, and then Ridge Point. So Ridge Point is not included in this. Is there a reason for that? Because Ridge Point seemed to have more, at least at the 10 or more, than Travis did. Is there a reason Ridge Point's not included?
Not necessarily, and they were right, well, that data, but they were right on the cusp. There were some other factors to take into consideration that we felt Travis was kind of next on the list above Ridge Point. But we've
But
discussed
including Ridge
that and-
Point can certainly be done. It's
Absolutely.
a matter of getting the right people in place to go out and conduct those focus groups and those meetings. And, they are neck and neck in terms of data. So, it kind of fluctuates, so certainly can look at Ridge Point as well.
So I'd like us to consider that just based on the data. I mean, I think they both kind of have the same, look like the same numbers going. Okay, thank you guys very much. Moving on to.
I have one
Oh, I'm
question.
sorry, Dave. Go ahead. Mr. Rosenthal.
For the restorative circles, where do they take place? I mean, what's the format? Is it in a classroom or is it
It would-
admin?
It would be on the campus where they have space, but yes, potentially in a classroom. But it wouldn't necessarily be, it could be a huge circle. It depends how many people would be involved, but it could just be a few of the main people that feel the connection with the student plus the student's parent. So it could be 5 or 6 people.
But this is not like during class time.
No, it does not have to be. And especially with the parents, it would probably have to be after school or before school.
Okay.
Can I,
Yeah, Mrs. James.
I have a question just on the dashboard sheets, the statistics sheets. If, when you're looking at that chart that Ms. Hellinger was mentioning, most of these charts, like if I look at the high school unexcused absences, it's just got percentages next to the bars. And I don't know what that's a percentage of. Is that the total student population, or I'm not sure what it's a percentage of. But if you could just maybe mark that or clarify either what it's a percentage of or what the number actually is.
On the last page or on previous?
Well, the pages I have aren't numbered, but it says high school unexcused absences.
Okay.
And it's about the middle. And then there's one that says middle school unexcused absences.
Yes.
And there, those percentages are, I don't know what, if we could, you have some numbers, then we could know if, you know, what the numbers were. I don't know.
It says the campus breakdown for unexcused
It's the
absences.
enrollment
Right.
by ethnicity of the campus
Where
in
does
the
it
first
say
column.
On the front sheet.
Okay.
There's a.
It's
like a-
the enrollment on the left tells you this is how the school breaks down by ethnicity in terms of the general population. Then the second graph shows you, so in terms of truancy and 10 or more unexcused absence, how does that look by ethnicity? That's really one of your most valuable tools in the packet.
Mrs. James, it might be helpful, we did not mention this evening, but the document you're looking at, one of the reasons it doesn't look beautiful with page numbers and all is because it's meant to be seen as a live dashboard online. That's
Okay.
dynamic, and so we printed it just for you to be able to see it and have it in front of you. And so
Okay.
we provided this front page to kind of explain what each page is. But
Okay.
if you look at it dynamically online, then you'll see little things pop up that show that when we
So
when we
this,
make
is
that
this available to me online, like
It-
this?
It is. We've been struggling with how to best provide it to the board, but it is, that's our intent, is we want to be able to give you live data like this, so you could go on at any given day and see what's going on.
I thought it was a dashboard, so.
Yes, ma'am.
Where, it's not an internal, it's an internal dashboard, just for your,
Well, for now, it is. It's in a system called Tableau, and we need to figure out how to best get the link to the board to be able to engage with it.
Okay, so it's not available right now to me online, and it's not available to the community.
That's
It's
correct.
just, okay, so,
Yes, ma'am.
all right, well, I'll study up on this then, and,
And at the board's request, this was one of our projects last spring, was to work to develop this type of system. We worked with Student Information Systems and developed this tool. So now it'll be like, now how do we get that out so that it's accessible? Next step.
Okay, thank you. 2B, Districts of Innovation.
Yes, ma'am. As you know, Districts of Innovation was approved by the Texas legislature during their last session, and we have been in such a state of flux, we haven't gotten to this yet. But we think it's time to really begin that discussion, and we know the board has an interest in it. So Beth is prepared to give you a few thoughts about that this evening, and we'd like to discuss with the board where we go from here. Beth?
All right, good evening. I'm excited to bring you additional information to support the information that was shared with you in last week's board update. And just kind of in a nutshell, to become a district of innovation, a school district might seek that designation to have more local control. What it gives the district the ability to do is to work with the community and work with an advisory group to determine what is important to the community, what's important at the local level, and then possibly receive exemptions from the Texas Education Code around those things. Now, there are some exemptions from the exemptions, if you will. There are some things that we cannot ask for or place within the plan to receive an exemption, and that's like our accountability system or financial accountability and that sort of thing. But several other districts in our area have pursued this designation, and it begins with a discussion in the boardroom, and the board completing a resolution to become a district of innovation. And at that time, then there would be a public hearing and the creation of an intervention team, excuse me, not an intervention, an innovation team that would work on engaging with groups within the community to develop an innovation plan. And there's a process for sharing that with our advisory council, our academic advisory council within the district, and for the board ultimately to vote after sharing information with the commissioner about our desire to become a district of innovation. And you have a flow chart within your packet that I believe you received electronically that you can click on some of the links within the flow chart, and it'll show you what's required by Texas Education Code to go through those steps to becoming a district of innovation. What's interesting to note is that this would give us the same flexibilities or similar flexibilities to Texas open charter schools. And so it's an opportunity for us to look at those things that we may consider important at the local level and to our community and to our students, and then pursue plans around engaging the community and putting a plan of action in place. The plans are good for up to 5 years, but there is also a process for reviewing and discussing that through the upcoming 5 years should we decide to pursue becoming a designated district of innovation.
Thank you, Ms. Martinez. We appreciate that. Okay, let's open this up for discussion. Mr. Rice.
Thank you, Mrs. Martinez. I'm really appreciate your report. I know it's just a starting point, and as you mentioned, this begins with the board. And I was attending a TASB board meeting where I learned that the Texas legislature is under pressure from charter schools to rescind District of Innovation. And they're considering doing that because not that many school districts have signed up for this. However, Spring Branch has. I believe they're a District of Innovation. Aldine ISD is considering it. Alief ISD is considering it. Next Friday, Juan Cabrera from El Paso ISD will be making a presentation to the Fort Bend Chamber of Commerce. They are a District of Innovation. They may be, at the moment, the largest school district in Texas that's already completed this work, District of Innovation. And when we talk about, sometimes we complain about all of the fetters that the Texas legislature places upon us, and this is an opportunity for us to break some of those. And I think that we should move forward and pursue this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rice. Mr. Rosenthal.
I would agree very much with that. I attended this session in San Antonio that was the name Dax Gonzalez, is that his name? Chaired, and got a lot of good information. One of the questions that I had for him, and I actually emailed him about a month ago, and I didn't really get an answer that maybe you guys can look into, was so we're not allowed to do anything basically, with bilingual, meaning you have to offer it. Okay, so we have to offer, we have to continue to offer that. We are allowed to do something with class size limits. So my question was, do you have a way to vary or to change the limits of class size for some of the bilingual programs? Because I know we struggle a lot with getting qualified bilingual teachers. And the smaller the class size, the more teachers you need. And so it puts a burden. So you may already have an answer to that. I know he didn't. He sent me to somebody else, and I haven't followed up with that. So,
Okay. I do not have an answer to that, but I can certainly do some research and come back to the board with a response.
I'll forward that email to you. And he told me somebody to go talk to.
Okay, thank you.
So,
Thank you, Mr. Rosenthal. Ms. Helliger.
I would like definitely for us to go to the next level with finding out more information about this. I did some preliminary reading about this, and I'm just interested in see where this goes to us. I didn't really mean to be on green, so I'm sorry. Thank
That's
you.
good that you weighed in, though.
Yeah.
I think we all need to weigh in. Thank you. Mr. Burdine.
So the reading that I've done, it seems great. I'm excited about it. We need to explore it. It's exciting to me, and I think that it could be something that could really move our district to the next level. So let's move on.
Thank you, Mr. Burdine. Mr. George.
I'm also in supportive of something like this, because I always thought we need to do something about, you know, what is our future look like 10, 15, 20 years from now. And I think this is an opportunity for Fort Bend ISD to shape their future. And also, we have a lot of resources available in our community, and along with my colleagues, I'm in full support of this effort.
Thank you, Mr. George. Mrs. James?
I echo what Mr. Rice said, because I think I've also heard the same rumors about not too many districts pursuing the option, and then it not being available to us. And so for that reason, I'm interested in exploring. I worry a little bit about our capacity as an organization to take on a tremendous effort to engage the community to the level that we would want to get their input and to sort through all the ideas and sort through all the pieces of this. So really, that's my only hesitancy, is capacity. But maybe I don't know what the rules are, so maybe there's a way around that we can look for and consider. But I definitely think we should look into it, and I think we should learn more about it, and I'll look forward to our next workshop about it.
Thank you, Mrs. James. So I probably share that concern that you articulated there, but I also am very much in favor of moving forward, mainly because we talk a lot about local control, and we talk a lot about wanting the flexibility to do some of these things that we think are best for kids. And so I think this may provide us that opportunity. So exploring what it will provide and will allow us to do, I think, is a good thing. So I think we were provided with a draft resolution, and it's my understanding that the first step is for the board to pass the resolution to kind of give you guys marching orders to go start the exploration process and provide us with more input and to start engaging the community to see what it is, however it is that they can have input on this as well. Am I correct in that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So
can I ask a question? Mm-hmm. What does the resolution trigger? Can you say those things again, or is someone who knows say those things?
Rick, do you want to speak to that, or Beth maybe, which?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
So I was saying that it's my understanding that the first step in triggering the exploration is for us to pass a resolution. That's
correct.
what the resolution is to say go forth and start exploring this and come back to us with more information and next steps. Is that correct?
Included within it would be the next step of setting the date for public hearing.
Okay. And that starts the process. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
But do we need to know more about whether it's worth I guess I feel like before we can determine if we want to go forward with the resolution, we need to have a pretty good understanding of our cost. There needs to be a little bit of cost-benefit analysis, I guess, effort versus what we would get out of it. I don't feel knowledgeable about that. I've talked to a couple of districts that have, or trustees from districts, but even in talking to them, I haven't been very clear about what they're trying to do.
I think, and you guys can speak to this, but we pass the resolution, we have a hearing for public comment, and then we decide whether we want to pursue it. Is that correct? So we're not actually deciding to pursue it. We're saying we want you to explore this. We set a hearing for public comment to see what the public thinks about it, and then we decide whether or not we're going to actually pursue it. So we're not at the pursuing it stage, we're at the gathering information stage.
I think that's right, that the kickoff and the adoption of the resolution that sets the public hearing just indicates to your constituencies that the board has interest in exploring the option. The detailed work will come once you appoint a District of Innovation Plan Committee that will do all the work. But ultimately, the board, I think, has the power to rescind or terminate the process at any time if it determines that's not the direction it wants to move in. Ultimately, the board will have to approve an innovation plan, and that will require a 2/3 majority of the board to do that.
The flow chart on the second page of the document we provided you, the stapled set, it's kind of got a big stop sign on it there. That after the public hearing, that really is, you're either gonna move on or the board will stop the process at that point after the public hearing.
So but what I'm hearing is that part of what the board would like to have, as we begin to explore this, is a cost-benefit analysis, and for your team, Dr. Dupree, to let us know about capacity, about cost-benefit, about what sacrifices we might have to make in some of the plans that we have articulated in the past year, and that would be part of our consideration at that point. Is that, Ms. Hilliger?
Yeah, and I guess trying to prepare for that public hearing by school board is that information. I just kind of want to understand what's that information that we're going to provide to the public. But then that second big box that says board appoints committee to develop plan with comprehensive educational program with initiatives and list of educational code provisions to be exempt. And then it, so basically here it sounds like we're developing the plan somewhat, right? And then
At which point, I'm sorry?
so this,
Yeah,
the big box, we're developing the plan, and I think that's where you get into more of the detail. Because I'm not sure what kind of information we actually have at the public hearing.
Well, let me talk about that for just a minute, because other districts we've talked to, you kind of, once the board passes a resolution, then there's kind of a education. So it's more than just a hearing where we say, hey, come and tell us what you think. We would do some large community engagement opportunities, some print pieces to allow the community to understand what it is we're even talking about. We'd want to understand what the community cares about, what do they value in a local accountability system, those kinds of questions, and explain what being a district of innovation means to our community, what it means, why we would want to do it. And then with all of that in mind, the board would then conduct a formal public hearing, and then folks could come with a background of knowledge to express their opinion to the board in that public hearing.
So, thank you. So once we go through the public hearing, let's say it passes or approves to move forward, it's no point of no return through here, because I don't see any other stop signs or anything like that.
Well, if you go all the way down to where there's 3 boxes in a row, and really the board doesn't vote until after they have posted it online for community feedback for 30 days. We send it to the commissioner, but the commissioner does not have to approve it. The board has the sole authority to approve. And then there's another public meeting where the advisory committee shares it publicly. So the board still has a final vote with a 2/3 vote that's required after the community's had lots of opportunity to weigh in on the plan again.
Thank you.
Mr. Rice?
Mrs. Tassan, I thought I understood you to say that before we would pass this resolution, are we asking Dr. Dupree and the administration to bring us additional information relative to the potential costs, those items that Mrs. James outlined, the capacity that the administration has to conduct this? Are we asking for them for that and their, and I guess I'll just ask you, Dr. Dupree, even though I may think this is a good idea, what do you think it is?
Yes, I do think it's a good idea.
Okay, and so, but are we going to do that one extra step, or are we just going to go ahead with the resolution? And whether we do or not is, I'm fine with it. I just want to make sure that it's on the agenda and that we make haste.
Yes, and so that's at the board's pleasure. I mean, we can pass the resolution next week, and they can move forward and bring us that information even next week, or even in the next, or whenever it is that Dr. Dupree
justify the chair.
Within a time frame that the administration thinks that they can gather that information. We could do it either way. I can express my opinion is that I would rather pass the resolution sooner rather than later in order to get the ball rolling and the exploratory process rolling, because I feel some of the same urgency that you feel, Mr. Rice, about whether or not this is going to be around for us. And we can still pass the resolution and still have administration present us with that information prior to the public hearing. We can set the public hearing date whenever we decide to set the public hearing date. And so administration, we can ask them to come back to us with the information even before that happens. That would probably be my opinion on it, but I'm open to other board members' opinions and how they think that should go. Does that answer your question, Mr. Rice?
I think we can go ahead and move forward and prepare for us to adopt a resolution for next week so that we can get the ball running. I feel like this is just any other portfolio type thing that we do. We put it in the queue, and then as long as we have which you all clarified to me, the process here, this last step, we just need to go ahead and get started.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Helliger. Do other board members have input, Mr. Burdine?
I'll echo that. Let's get the ball rolling. If we're not obligated to, if we're not obligated to vote on it, so to speak, for a final plan, then let's get the ball rolling. So.
Okay.
So
Mrs. James.
thank you, sorry. When I look at the draft resolution here, it says that the resolution is just asking that a public hearing be held to consider whether the district should develop a local innovation plan. So it seems that if we pass the resolution, then it becomes administration's responsibility to plan for that public hearing. And at that time, as Dr. Dupree mentioned, they'd have to present all the information around the things that we've asked about tonight, but then what that might look like going forward. What's confusing to me is I thought I heard somebody say that maybe before the hearing there would be community engagement. I don't know. I did hear that. So I don't know if that's what we really mean, and that's why I guess maybe in the next week we should sort of flesh this out, because I'd like to understand. I'd like to really understand the process and what we're committing to. As I said before, I'm very hesitant to commit resources, at the start of school and all of these things that make it put a strain on our organization. I'm in favor of innovation, but I'm cognizant of, and I want to fully understand what we have to give up, or what the trades are that we'd be making to go forward with putting our efforts into this, especially if we're talking about doing it this fall, and what that might look like. So I guess I'm kind of going around in circles, but I'm not that clear on what the plan forward is, I guess.
I think if we ask that Ms. Martinez provide some type of high-level project plan or scope plan of, what's going to be done over an extended period of time, that will help us for next week. I don't know if that's something that you can prepare for next week, but I think a high-level plan would assist.
Absolutely.
And give us a timeline for when you can get us the information that we've requested as well.
Okay.
And, I mean, this resolution is a draft resolution. This resolution can be anything we want it to be. I mean, we're not confined to what this says. If we want to add to the resolution that we are asking administration to come back with a certain information by a certain date, and then we will set the public hearing after that date. I think we can ask you guys to provide us with a draft that incorporates everything that we've discussed here to make sure that we've captured all the information that we've requested and takes that into consideration when setting a date for a hearing. Does that address, I mean, we can address it in the resolution.
No, I think that that's good, and I'm in favor of a public hearing because I'm in favor of starting the community conversation about it. But I also, sometimes I know that if the board starts to go forward on something and then all of a sudden we decide, oh, this is a bad idea, then sometimes it's difficult to backtrack and change direction. So I'm just acknowledging that because it's difficult for all of us, right? If we start the train moving, it's hard to change direction. I'm all in favor of looking into it. I don't know what the best time, what the best landmarks are and what the best order is.
So can you guys also include in that plan that Ms. Helliger talked about, what kind of public education or what kind of community education you think you would have to do before the public hearing in order to ensure that the public understands what this hearing is for, what the resolution actually means, because that is going to be some dedication of resources. And so if you can give us an idea of what that's going to look like and what you guys think will be needed to get out ahead of it, that would probably help us as well. Mr. George, did you have, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to,
Go ahead.
yeah, I just wanted to say that I am supportive of creating a draft resolution and exploring. And I hear Ms. James' concerns and, valid concerns, but we need to look into it. That's the only way we are going to find out whether we need it or not, so I support that.
Okay. Mr. Rosenthal, you were the only one that hasn't weighed in on that, on moving forward. Well, I mean, after the fact, we talked about whether or not to pass the resolution next week. You're in favor, okay. Just want to make sure I had everyone's input. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We will now convene in closed session.
One more.
Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped C.
Yep. All right.
No, we don't want to skip C.
No, this is an important one.
Compensation update.
As you know, all throughout the spring, our outstanding CFO, Stephen Bassett, has talked about the constraints of our budget and our desire to do a pay increase for all staff. But ultimately, the board approved a step increase for all of our teachers with the understanding we would come back once we got the certified values to discuss the idea of what we could do for other staff. And so tonight, he does have a plan that he'd like to share with you. So I'll turn it over to Steve Bassett.
Thank you, Dr. Dupree, President Tassan, and members of the board. Okay, so we do have some information to share on some things that have happened since we last got together to talk about finance. I will show you a chart on oil prices in the second half of the briefing later when we talk about the tax rate, but oil, as you know, did come down. Gas prices are lower. Some of the other things that are just interesting at a statewide level, the state agencies have all been told to plan for at least a 4% budget cut. Some other just interesting things.